since we don't have the audience, Jennifer, do we have any to be read? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, we have 5 comments from the public. It's so small, I don't think you'll be able to read it. In 2009, a memorandum of understanding between the Oceanside Police Department and the Oceanside Small Craft Harbor District Harbor Patrol stated there will be no degradation of service to the public. Under the proposed structure, the residents, slip runners, visitors, and businesses in the Harbor District would experience no change of duties by the harbor unit officers, as staffing and responsibilities will remain the same. Harbor slip permit holders who have experienced both systems know that this is not true. In 2018, OPD Harbor Patrol officers conducted the following actions outside the harbor. Field interviews, 583, arrest, adult, 239, citation, 122, arrest, outside warrant, 58, citation, traffic, 49, arrest, juvenile, 5, arrest, local warrant, 5, citation, misdemeanor, 3. Total actions, 1,064. These actions were conducted outside the harbor by officers who were being paid by the Oceanside Harbor District. While performing the above actions, they were not in the district serving the slip runners, harbor businesses, or harbor residents who bankroll their salaries. As a California Special Enterprise District, it is mandated that the Oceanside Small Craft Harbor District be self-supporting, raising the funds to do so from slip fees, property rent, sales tax, special event, and parking revenues. Funds are not supposed to be raised to support needs within the city's budget. These are 2 separate political entities. As such, the harbor directors and the city council members are mandated to oversee the public funds are used in the manner mandated by law. We believe the attached plan for reorganization of marine public safety services within the city and the Oceanside Small Craft Harbor District will return safety services to the Oceanside Small Craft Harbor District that are consistent with state-mandated regulations at considerable savings and provide increased services. Respectfully, Paul and Pat Gadbois. I am wanting to know why the suggestion for review of the police department continuing to provide reduced service to boaters in Oceanside Harbor was not allowed to be put on the agenda. The chairperson, Liz Ray, requested that the information submitted to boaters and slip runners website was not allowed to be put on their agenda for committee to comment and review facts. In these times of shutdowns and looming cuts, this makes perfect sense to allow these volunteer members to review and make recommendations to our elected officials. Please do not censor our voices and enough lying about what has been going on in our harbor. We all have eyes and see what's going on. Thank you for your time. Captain Les George, Pacific Coast Sail Charters. As a longtime resident of Oceanside Yacht Club members and slip runners, we 100% back the Oceanside Harbor reorganization plan. Our money should go to trained watermen to protect us, the harbor, and all those on the water in Oceanside. For the safety of all boaters in the harbor of Oceanside, we need competent and fully trained lifeguard watermen to support the needs. It is key that these men and women have the experience needed to truly protect and keep us all safe. We need to do better, Oceanside. We request this be put on the agenda immediately. Holly Davis. Slip runner rent money pays for harbor police. All harbor police need to be seaworthy officers. Please restore the level of service to the 2009 agreement. Being slip runners for 40 years, we have seen the excellent level of service provided by the harbor police deteriorate. Thank you, the Avinas. Danny and Raul Avina. I've reviewed the extensive, well-written proposal attached to blend harbor patrol and lifeguards, which should be placed on the Harbor and Beaches Advisory Committee agenda today. Even if it isn't, I strongly recommend that it's forwarding to the city for its full review and ultimate presentation to the council for serious consideration. Ira Hetch, Oceanside resident and slip runner.
Thank you. With all those that were read, I am again requesting that for the next meeting, if we could put this on the agenda just for conversation and answering of questions. This particular committee cannot make policy change, as we all know, but when we have such information set forth to us, whether we agree or disagree or have no opinion on this at all, I still feel that we should be allowed to at least review it. So Ted, if we could please just have it for the August meeting. Thank you. Now to back up a little bit, I forgot to do the approval of the minutes for the February 17th regular meeting and the special meeting for May 21st. Do we have any comments or corrections on that? None. May I have a motion to accept? Okay. Second? Second. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay. Our next one is the election for the Harbors and Beaches Advisory Committee for chair and vice chair. I'd like to open up to the floor for nominations, please, for chair.
I nominate Liz Ray for chair.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. May we have a vote? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And now for vice chair, we have any nominations for vice chair?
Mike Kobus.
Would you like a second on that, please?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Thank you. So you guys are stuck with us again. Financial report. Hi, Jane.
Hello. It's been a bit of time since we've been able to see each other. Or
yes.
Somewhat see each other, right? Under our new exciting conditions here. All righty then. Good evening, committee. This is Jane McPherson. I'm the Financial Services Director here at the city. I would like to, first of all, you may not have all had a chance to meet her, but Jill Moya, who joined us in January in another management position in my department and is now the accounting manager. Richard left, and Richard Hertz, he moved to Arkansas. So we did a recruitment, and we were lucky. She comes to us originally from Carlsbad with a lot of accounting and auditing experience. So she will be working on these going forward. So you won't be able to have me as your, unless there's an opening or a request. So you were sent a packet of information. We did replace the front sheet. This is the actual one that should have gone out with it. And we'll go through the PowerPoint, and then I'm available to go over any of the documents that you had questions about. So this is the financial update as of May 31st. Here's the balance sheet. Key items is the cash levels is $6 million. Very low accounts payable. Excuse me. Long-term notes. There isn't a lot of outstanding debt, just a little over, under $1 million now. In reserves, there is unrestricted money of $4.6 million and the emergency repair fund of $950,000. The invested in capital assets net of debt, that cannot be touched. It's an offset to the fixed asset less the amount of debt. So you cannot count that as available funds. Just a quick overview where, as of May 31st, as compared to budget and overall, with operating revenue less expenditures, operating expenditures, and capital improvements, it was planned to have a deficit of $833,000, and right now it's at $88,000. The reason that we expected the deficit is that the capital improvements were being paid by those reserves that we just looked at, which were the unrestricted funds there. So they're actually a little below. It just depends on the status of the project. Here are the harbor revenues. As you can see, even with the COVID-19 impact, we had very few deferrals. I believe, Ted, you were saying 45 of them. So people have been paying. We actually, because it's an enterprise fund, at the time they bill, we actually accrue the revenue anyway. It would become I know I'm going to go into accounting speak, but it would be, you know, a reserve for debt from your accounts receivable. But also the leases, the restaurants, businesses, we're a little low at 67%, but we have one big payment that comes at the end of the year, so you really can't, you have to kind of discount it. So there's no concerns there. Parking, apparently we've been going gangbusters since we opened up, so that was great news, Ted, to hear about that. We should end up okay. June is going to be very busy. So, and the weather looks like it's going to draw a lot of people down to visit us. And also, right now is when a lot of people are buying their beach parking permits for July 1. Well, that revenue is recognized when it comes in, so you're getting, the harbor's getting a third of it. So that should help a lot. Inspections, the other miscellaneous. Investment income, we don't budget. Sometimes we don't in some certain departments, others we do. It's so unexpected. We don't know what's going to happen, and we didn't know COVID was going to happen. So that's why you see a little bit of difference, quite a bit of difference between the budget and the actual. Expenditures, as you can see, we have 1 month left. Overall, the only area that's low, and I think it's because of lack of staffing, is maintenance. And the Tideland lease, that's trued up at the end of the year. That's a lease between the city and the harbor, and that's based on gross revenues, and we do a final payment, so I'm not worried about that one. Or it's not going to be as much of a benefit as we thought. Looking at it right now, it'll probably be at 100% or more, depending on the revenues. So total expenditures are at 83%, which is great shape with 1 month left. So whatever we don't spend with the revenues coming in, if we spend less, we have more money to put into our reserves. Here is the status of what was budgeted for all the different capital improvement plans. Some of it, I think the dock electrical upgrades, pedals, that's done now. Is that done now? Yeah. And then the SB8 restroom remodel, looks like it's going along just well. Harbor tunnel improvements and the dock extra storage, those completed? Almost completed. So you're going to see some, and then JDock, that's just starting, isn't it? Yeah, so that's just starting. But these have all been planned as part of the budget that the city approved our last meeting. The capital project plan for the harbor was included, as well as all the harbor. But if you look at it, you can see that we go 5 years out, and then we have a couple major ones projects that will be over $3 million to fix some of the docks. So you'll see that coming in the next few years. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions for me?
Mike?
Hi there.
Hi, good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
It's been a long time. My question is regarding the harbor maintenance and the JDock. It appears from conversations with the harbor manager that we're still pretty far off this happening, and we're not sure what the actual total cost of that is going to be. But and you just stated that there'll be further dollars allotted in budgets moving forward. What I want to, if you recall, I sat down with a meeting with you last year, yourself and I think Kyle, and that time
Richard.
Right, exactly. And I showed you the maintenance log or report that was completed in 2015 and published in 2016. And at that time, they were requesting that JDOC be replaced immediately. And here we are moving into 2020 and maybe 2021 before that is going to be happening. But at that same time, I also mentioned that the harbor in and of itself had just about reached its 50-year shelf life, for lack of a better term. And
Excuse
at that
me,
time,
would you speak up or directly into the microphone, please?
All right, how's that?
Thank you.
Okay. That the harbor in and of itself had a 50-year shelf life, and we have about reached that from the last time that it was refurbished or rebuilt. And so my question was, where are the dollars going to come from moving forward after we expend what dollars we have on JDOC? And again, we're not going to know what that final cost is going to be. So I guess what I'm asking you, Jane, is where's the money coming from moving forward to continue to repair our docks?
So here's your revenues. That's where the money comes from. So anytime you don't spend all your revenues as expenditures, so right now you've spent 6.6 million, and your revenues right now are at 6.9, so you're up 300,000. That's where you get the money. One of the things that has been in discussion since the day I got here over 10 years ago is where to, let's increase slip rentals, whatever. This is where you have the options to make money, that's where our harbor is, and that's what Ted and Kyle manage. I'm not the decision maker for that. I only bring forth the numbers, and I'll give you where I see it as an honest answer. But you have to look at your revenue sources. That's not going to change unless you go in and do some financing, which occasionally there are good deals. We have some options out there, and that would be another one, is to increase your debt. But if you increase your debt, then you have the payments, right? And then you have to look at that as part of your whole plan. So I don't know where, and Ted or Kyle can speak to this because I don't do that part of it, but what they should have would be, but I'm sure they do, a plan outlining the long range of how they're going to maintain the harbor. You have limited sources, so you have to figure out how you're going to utilize those available sources in order to provide the repairs and other needs of the harbor.
So when you say that it's not your responsibility so much as it falls on the shoulders of either our harbor manager or Kyle or perhaps our city council.
Well, I wouldn't go as simple as that, but I am here to report on the historical numbers, and I would look at budgets, and I can give you information on where you're at and suggest options for moving forward. And that's what I mentioned as far as getting additional debt to be able to do it. However, I think our best resources are either Kyle or Ted, who are at the harbor. They're the ones that are looking at the needs of the harbor. And Kyle, if you want to talk about it, he'll be glad to answer some questions if you have any. Do you want to take this one or the next one? Here, there you go. It's all yours.
Thank you.
So we put out an RFQ to shortlist some consultants late last year, early this year. We've narrowed it down to 3 firms that now we're going to have propose on a condition assessment going forward. So they'll inventory all the docks, they'll do a condition assessment. Will also going to eventually lead into a master plan. So we're hoping with this process that this company, whoever we decide on pick, which will probably, when will that happen, Ted? The end of this year? Yeah, by the end of this year. They'll come in and do this assessment. and kind of tell us where can we go from here? Do we get bonds to, help build some of these improvements going forward? Do we need to raise fees or rents, or where do we need to go? But we don't have a lot in reserves, and this JDOC project's going to take up a lot of that.
That is my concern, and I know that whichever firm that you are going to settle on is going to cost a big chunk of money. Can I ask you one other thing? Is that I know you saw that inspection report that I showed because you were at the meeting that we had last year. Are we feeling that that report is dated? I mean, it was published in 2016, and the ocean is open 24/7. So I understand that portion of it, but those the depth of those inspections take a long time, and to formulate a way to resolve them fiscally. I mean, are we 24, 36 months out from this? Give me a ballpark here.
For the assessment?
Yes.
A year? Go ahead.
Vice Chair Kobus, Ted Chiffone, Harbor Manager. We should be able to decide on a consultant before the end of this year and have them begin the project early next year with approximately 10 months, 8 to 10 months completion time. And that project is going to include more than the study that you saw. The study that you saw is very incomplete. It's basically a facility study at a specific time. It doesn't help us identify what needs to be done and when and what it's going to cost. So this study is going further, and I'm not somebody who likes to have a lot of consultants take our money, but we absolutely need to have a maintenance plan along with a facility survey, and that's what we're doing. And in addition to that, a financial plan on what is it going to take, what do we need to do to ensure that we have the funds to complete the maintenance while we move forward towards a master plan, which is going to be a future project.
So sitting today, we have dollars for the refurbishment of JDOC, but looking further down the road, we're still going to be analyzing and consulting and deciding where those funds are going to be.
Yeah, JDOC is our oldest dock. I believe it was built in 1983.
Correct.
We have a bunch of other docks that were built 1985 to 1990. So we know that they're coming due pretty quick. So after we spend money on JDOC, and it will be replaced, there's not a whole lot left to look at some of these other docks. So it's a concern of mine, and that's why we need someone to come in and look at it, have some registered engineers, people that are going to go and really look at it and give us like a maintenance plan going forward for the next few years, and then how are we going to fund these replacements that we know are coming here in the next however long.
Will this body be involved in that process?
Yeah, I mean, once we pick a consultant and move forward, we have no problem, creating a little subcommittee or something to kind of sit in with the consultant and us and talk about options. That's something we can definitely do.
I would like that, just because, as I've stated, I have a vested interest. Been there since '96, and everybody else has been there forever, and that's. For lack of a better term, it's our final resting place, and we want to make sure that it stays good and safe as long as we do. But like I said, again, not to reiterate, I'm troubled that we don't have a plan. So I'm glad we're having a plan in motion, but just.
And Vice Chair
Sure.
Kobus, and I'll just tell you that in the draft proposal that hasn't been approved yet, it does include language that stipulates outreach to our stakeholders to identify, what it is and how to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Just one quick question. I know we have some bonds out on the Harbor Patrol boat, but when was the last time the harbor took out big bonds for a major improvement?
The bonds,
10 years?
It's been a long time. I don't have actually off the right. We're almost done.
Right.
There's
so
only just a few years left.
after the
I think it's
analysis,
like 3 years left. Yeah. And then we have a boat debt that is also being paid off.
Okay.
And that has quite a few more years on it. 20-year, right? Yeah. So you're in a good position to potentially look at a different, depending when you assess. Generally, you assess what you need, then you go out and find the money. So I'm hoping that that will be a path that'll work out for the harbor. We, at the city, of course, in all our assets, we want them to continue to be kept up. However, the harbor is an enterprise fund, so it works a little bit differently. But we're all here supporting the harbor as well.
Thank you.
Steve?
Hi. Hey, thanks for sharing with us. This is one of the most important part of managing the harbor, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see the accounts receivable so high, 254,000. Can you share with us some of those accounts? Are we to be alarmed? Can you assure us that there are not going to be bad debts written off?
The accounts receivable, this was in May, so that would include anybody that's running late on any of the bills or any bills that were deferred. Do you guys know how many, what you have in your, like, 60 to 90? It's about 60 accounts. So out of 1,000, that's not a huge amount. Generally, accounts receivable hasn't been a real problem because people want their boat in the harbor and they want to be able to stay there. So we're able to collect on more. Is there something in particular you're concerned about? No, just wondering what it's composed of.
So you can't be specific?
Well, I don't have the accounts receivable list in front of me. That's something
I
that...
was just curious.
Yeah, and we don't generally give out all that type of information, but it is maintained. Jennifer and Ted do look at it, and they do look at when we do our monthly write-offs, or we have payment plans or something like that. They are reviewed by them prior for them to come to finance in my collections area.
Yeah,
So.
I'm sure that your department is on this and managing it and going to be getting those funds. I was just curious.
Yeah, it's if you're concerned, it's a lot. It looks like a big number, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's pretty consistent for this department. Sometimes people are behind a month. Sometimes it's just timing. If we build and people are going to pay on the 1st of the month, so this is the 31st, right? And they paid on June 1st, we could run it today and it could look a lot different. I should have done that because then I would have had that number for you.
Thank you.
So we'll look at it. And Jennifer, the next time you have a chance, just kind of update the group to see where we're at now, and maybe that'll rest your mind a little bit. Anything else? You got me. Okay, well, thank you all for having me here tonight.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is Lieutenant Sullivan, please.
No rush? Do you have a PowerPoint? Okay, I'm just going to spray the area for you. You don't want Jane germs. That could be dangerous. Have a good evening.
You too. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I hope this evening finds you well. Dan Sullivan with the Police Department. Actually, the news in the harbor and along our beaches has been remarkably quiet despite our COVID crisis, the beach closures, and the revenue that was most likely lost as a result of it in the downtown area. And all the parking lots in the harbor that have been closed, everything is now open. Crime statistics are down. There was a pause, especially during the COVID crisis or pandemic, that our enforcement was down significantly. And here in the last few weeks, that has increased dramatically, as you all can imagine. And some of the other news in the harbor especially is, as I read in the paper, that some concern of new personnel and turnover and things of that nature. Yes, we had 3 retirements. I think I mentioned that last year about this time, that this was an expectation that, that we had based on those retirements that were pre-planned. And all those positions have been filled, and as soon as they come down, they are immediately put through about a 12-week training class. That training class, while it does not give a lot of experience, they do and have had proper training to operate a boat, to perform safety rescues, to dive on boats, on some of them anyway. And obviously that's been a concern, but I'm here to tell you that training, they are well trained. We still have 2 that are in training, and they should be done by the end of the month if they make it through that process. But, Mr. Ford, how long have you been sailing a boat? Sir, how long have you been sailing a boat?
Pardon?
How long have you been sailing your vessel?
Oh, I've been sailing that boat for 16 years.
And prior to that, sir, if you don't mind me asking?
Pardon?
And prior to that, if you don't mind me asking?
I had another sailboat that I sailed out of this harbor for 2 years.
Okay. So safe to say that you've got about 20 years of experience on the water, or if not more?
Yeah.
Okay.
More if you
Okay. All right. How about you, Mr. Kobus? How long have you been sailing a boat? Or at least on the water around the ocean?
Oh, at least 30 years.
Okay. The point I'm trying to make is in this profession, there is turnover in every position. That's just the nature of this job. As much as training helps, experience also helps. But the only way that you get experience is by spending 20 or 30 years on the water. And it frustrates me because I don't have the liberty to speak of that. And because of the internal workings of a police department, or much like any other position, some people stay, some people move. Our police department has 8-year rotations on the new officers since 2009. And so there will always be continual turnover, and there will always be an opportunity for new people that want to come down here and serve the public to learn and gain that experience. So, and that's all I have for presentation. If there are any questions, I'll gladly answer them. Yes, sir.
I understand that you were reassigned during the COVID outbreak to another task force. Is that correct?
Not necessarily reassigned. I was still, my services were needed downtown. I was the incident commander for most of our riot or protester response over the course of about a week. And what's nice is I have 2 sergeants. The one harbor sergeant that's truly assigned to the harbor was reassigned to our mobile field force, our riot team, basically, as well as some of the officers. But the other officers did their due diligence and picked up those extra hours and those responsibilities to ensure that coverage was 24/7 in the harbor.
So we had the lead person at least was a sergeant or above.
Yes.
At all times down at the harbor?
Yes.
Counting the times that you were out. As I always ask you, have we had any incidents where the Harbor Patrol had to respond to anyone that was in need?
We had one last week, which was a minor mechanical breakdown. That they went out and towed that vessel in. It did not necessarily qualify as part of that emergency. They were a little bit offshore. They had time and a few of those things, but based on the surf conditions, we decided to go out and get those folks. We did have 2 jet skis that washed up on the harbor beach the other day. Both were, one was mechanical and the other one was just absolutely should not have been operating a jet ski, and made it inside the surf line and lost that vessel. And towboat actually responded and took possession of those vessels. And then we had a couple of, excuse me, we had a couple of salvage type operations during a rainstorm in which we responded to. One, a vessel at sea that was a little bit south of here. Coast Guard was the primary responder to that, and then they ended up fouling their prop on the tow line. So they were unable to save that vessel. And by the time we got down there, that boat was inside the surf line, and a sailboat was lost to the beach. As those units were responding back into the harbor, there was a boat that had some maintenance done on it, and one of the through hulls was left uncapped and took on a significant amount of water, in which we did actually refloat that vessel and had it hauled out that night. So.
Okay, thank you. Last question. I saw a state of California vessel sitting in our docks now.
I see that too.
It's for Parks
Can
and
you
Rec.
elaborate on that, sir?
Yes, state parks, and this is on TED, but state parks is a law enforcement branch,
Right.
and they were looking for a place to berth a vessel, and Ted can answer the rest of the questions.
So are they?
Vice Chair Kobus, yeah.
Can you
Ted
elaborate on that? How long they're going to be?
Yeah, they made a
Are here
request
for a while,
to
or?
maintain a vessel at the harbor. We found a location. They are paying full price as any other slip permittee in the harbor. So not only are they creating revenue for the harbor, it's another form of enforcement on the water that, you know, is available to the harbor and on the water. So it's a good thing overall.
Well, LT, where is their line of jurisdiction in terms of?
Mainly fish and game type violations.
Okay, is that what they're?
They're very limited in scope based on what their true, I guess, role or mission is. That
I
is
guess
set
that,
forth.
and that's the question I'm asking you. What are you doing here, and why are you here? So if that's to oversee our fishing group, or is that what I'm understanding, or can you elaborate on that more?
Typically, that vessel is towed to the harbor and launched on a regular basis anytime they have enforcement action that they're taking, or whether they're just simply going out and doing spot checks. So rather than them having to launch, you know, with a truck on a regular basis, they asked if there was a spot in the harbor where they can maintain a vessel, make it much easier for them, quicker for them to respond. So that's the purpose of the
And what
vessel.
type of agreement did they come to? Are they there for 30 days, 60, a year, or what's the?
Regular. It's a regular permit, which is a 30-day permit,
Month to month.
month-to-month permit.
Okay, and they don't have any contact with yourself, LT, in terms of what they're doing, where they're doing it, or?
Not at all, sir.
Well-
I met their supervisor, the sergeant that was there, and we discussed a little bit of roles and mission, but his focus is definitely on doing game enforcement, and they seem to spend a lot of time out in open water, not so much in the harbor.
Okay, so pretty clear lines in terms of jurisdiction then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Lieutenant Sullivan, this past Sunday, there, about 2 or 3 o'clock, was there a protest down at the harbor over the bridge?
There was a group that walked through there. I would be hard-pressed to say it was a protest. It was more of a slow-moving demonstration.
Okay.
There have been varying degrees of enthusiasm as far as the protests go, and Sunday in particular was a slow day, you might say.
Okay.
But we had we had made contact with the organizer of that protest, actually with all of them over the course of the last couple of weeks, and had an idea of where they were going. So our concern about public safety or about looting or those type of things, literally at the bottom of our threshold scale.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, if I could. Since we have such a turnover in our force at the harbor, once we have an established force, is there a way that perhaps for about 5 minutes at one of our meetings here, they could come in and introduce themselves to us, and therefore maybe to the people who are here at that time when the meeting will be open to the public?
The ones that are on duty,
Yeah.
I will certainly have them come in, especially the ones that you don't know. And if not, I think we can probably figure out another way that I can get everyone together perhaps, and we could do that. Wednesdays is generally a training day where we have most of resources from the front half of the week and the back half of the week there. And we might be able to do something on that day.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'd be calling them in on overtime.
Or maybe they could come in on their own if they want to say hi.
They could.
Okay. It's just that such a large turnover, and I see new people all the time on the boat, and I'm going, okay, are you here to stay, or are you here to train, or what? So I thought perhaps this is a way that we could get acquainted.
We have, well, on that note, and there have been several new faces because, and again, I didn't read this in the newspaper, but I think it's important, is our officers that are assigned to the beach, the ones right down by the pier, that group I also supervise. Those officers, while they're not assigned to the harbor, in a boat rescue or if there's a swimmer in the water, somebody has to drive the boat, and that is our boat operators that are down in the harbor. Somebody has to get in that water. Most of the time, these scenarios happen at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Lifeguards aren't available. So it's another uniformed cop, and we cross-train the resource team is what they are called, or beach team. Our beach team are cross-trained on our boats in our harbor for that very purpose. So there is a second officer on that boat for the safety and welfare of not only the guy driving the boat, but there's also needs to be another set of eyes that are looking to the rear so you don't back down on someone in the water, things of that nature. And we teach them how to be able to maintain and hold that boat in a position so we can get a swimmer in the water. But they are cross-trained as deckhands.
Okay. Any other questions? Joe?
On social media, there was a post about damage in the harbor, and it was quickly debunked. Was there any work done by the police to find out who was posting that, quote, fake news?
Yes.
Good.
The one, what Mr. Yag is referring to, there was a report on social media about some of the businesses being looted in the harbor. I'm not a big social media guy, so it came to me a little bit late, but Ted and both my sergeants were aware of this. After discussing it, one, we immediately knew that it was nonsense, but we felt it was important to go and identify the poster of that, who is a local resident and actually doesn't live too far away from the harbor, and went and made contact, and she said this is what she was told, so she thought she would spread this to everyone else. So, but it created a little bit of a hiccup in the harbor that day. So,
Okay. Steve, you had a question?
Yes. About a week ago during the scheduled protest, I was told that every officer canceled their days off and vacations and they were on the streets protecting our city. I think that's very commendable. I think it was a very successful few nights.
It was actually. In times of peril, let's say, especially civil unrest type things, or natural disasters, fires, flood, locusts, all of those things, the police department divides all their personnel into 50% on a day shift, working normally from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then the other 50% of the police department works from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. We did that for a week and had the responsibility of, you had every patrolman, you had every specialized unit, our investigative units, our narcotics guys, our gang guys, our homicide detectives, all of those resources were brought to bear, and 50% worked in the day and 50% at night. The only unit that was not brought back into the fold was the harbor unit. I felt it was important to leave those trained personnel there because they have a very specific mission and a very specific skill set. But vacations were canceled and they were required to come back to work, so we could deploy that.
Well, was there an officer on duty in the marina?
Yes, sir.
So when you say they're on duty, were they in the marina or were they in the adjacent area policing the area streets and?
Our harbor guys, my direction to our harbor folks were that they stay in the harbor, and they weren't downtown, they weren't a part of the protests, they weren't a part of the security for the protests, so the harbor guys were in the harbor.
That's wonderful, because you know, emergencies on the water are measured in seconds, correct?
Yes, sir.
And with the amount of new tourism that we're having, there's a huge amount of people renting boats, power, sail, kayaks, jet skis, stand-up paddleboards in the marina, and the majority of those people are inexperienced. And there will be a tragedy someday if they're not policed and warned and trained to avoid boats. And I see that consistently every summer.
As do I, sir. Trying to work on that, actually.
Yeah, so I'm really surprised how someone like yourself can plan for that. You have to have some experienced watermen ready to dive in. Like, I think last summer we had a rollover in the entrance. There was a successful rescue. Nobody died, but someone could have certainly perished.
Yes, sir.
And last week I saw 2 patrols come into the marina pretty quickly. I was on the north end, so I could see the patrolmen, the patrol cars come in. They raced down, got on a patrol boat, and raced down to the pier. Was that the mechanical problem you were talking about?
That was a different emergency right on the Carlsbad Oceanside border.
Oh, cool. Was it successful?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful.
Any other questions? None?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tiffany Chen. Would you please like to tell us about some gazebos?
Good evening, Chairperson, committee members. I'm Tiffany Chen with the Planning Division. Before you is a regular coastal permit project for outdoor dining gazebos at Rockin' Baja. Rockin' Baja Restaurant is located at the south end of the harbor, just west of the lighthouse feature at 258 Harbor Drive. The property has a zoning designation and land use designation of harbor. Business license records show that the restaurant has been in operation since the 1990s. The gazebos that are being reviewed under the regular coastal permit application are actually already existing and have been in place for some time. They are the brown pitched roof structures in the photos. The necessity of the regular coastal permit came to planning's attention through a code enforcement case and a building permit plan check review. Due to the location of the property within the appealable area of the coastal zone, a regular coastal permit is required for any proposed structures. Other outdoor structures in the harbor, such as the one for the Oceanside broiler, have also had to go through the regular coastal permit process. 6 gazebos are included as part of the request, 4 11 feet by 11 feet and 2 11 feet by 14 feet. They are all about 10.5 feet tall to the highest point. They consist of wood posts and aluminum roofs. Here's the overall site plan showing the location of the 6 gazebos. The 4 with dimensions 11 by 11 are grouped together at the west side, and the 2 with dimensions 11 by 14 are grouped together near the lighthouse. There's a clearance of about 5.5 feet for the walkway on the west side of the restaurant. Here are some elevation views of the gazebos. And the top is a view from the east, and the bottom is a view from the north. In terms of general plan land use compliance, staff finds that the gazebo style and materials match the harbor's aesthetic. They are also located within the leased outdoor eating area for the restaurant and provide patrons with a comfortable, shaded environment. Staff is not aware of any complaints regarding the gazebos, aside from the code enforcement case, for not obtaining an entitlement and permit. The structures were reviewed for compatibility with the existing and surrounding development in the harbor per the Small Craft Harbor Precise Plan. Oops. As mentioned earlier, the property is located within the appeal jurisdiction of the local coastal program. Since the gazebos are below the height of the restaurant, they will not impact public coastal views, and there is also no applicable string line setback. In terms of California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA review, staff has determined that the project qualifies for a new construction or conversion of small structures categorical exemption, since the gazebos are accessory to the restaurant. Thus, staff recommends that the Harbor and Beaches Advisory Committee, by motion, recommend approval of a CEQA exemption for new construction or conversion of small structures and a regular coastal permit, RC 19-16, for 6 gazebos in the outdoor eating area of Rockin' Baja to the Small Craft Harbor District Board. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions. The applicant was not able to make it onto the teleconference line tonight. Thank you.
With these permits, is there going to be any extra fees for not applying for them in the first place?
If they continue to not comply, they are complying by applying for the regular coastal permit, but if they hadn't and had not addressed it, then there would have been additional fees from code.
Is the city going to get any additional fees?
So we receive fees for this entitlement review, and we may receive more fees for the building permit review.
Okay. Mike, do you have one?
How many extra, I mean, I see all the dimensions, but in terms of basic tables and chairs and actual bodies,
There isn't.
butts in the chair, as I like to refer to it, what's the increase in the volume of individuals?
There's no known increase. It's the same outdoor eating area is existing. It's just the gazebos that are being added on top.
Okay, so there won't be any increased seating area, no increased?
Correct, no increase.
Okay.
It was basically for shade, is my understanding.
Is that?
Correct.
Shade and comfort of their patrons.
Right.
Okay. That's why I wanted to get clear that they weren't going to try to put some more tables in there someplace below the radar, so to speak.
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of. Thank you.
Carolyn?
Tiffany, is there a reason why they didn't go through the permit process to begin with?
I'm not sure exactly why. It came to our attention through code enforcement, so maybe they weren't aware that they had to apply for a regular coastal permit.
Okay, and then my other question is, when I walked by there, it looks like the west elevation, are those posts on public sidewalk?
They do go over the wall, but there is still a minimum clearance. Our minimum per engineering is 4 feet, so they do have more than 4 feet with the 5.5 feet sidewalk width there.
So that's legal for them to encroach on the sidewalk?
Through the building permit process, engineering would review and determine if they need an encroachment removal agreement.
That's it.
Any other questions? Okay, we are asked for a recommendation by the committee. Am I correct to approve this?
Yes.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Ted?
Good evening, Chair Ray, Vice Chair Kobus, and committee members. Ted Chaffone, Harbor Division Manager. I'm here to give you my regular update for the harbor. This is a little more lengthy than previous ones, basically because we missed an entire meeting. I would ask if I could present the entire information for you today, and then I'll be glad to answer any questions after I've completed that. First item I'd like to discuss with you is the harbor inlet. We've been following the depths of the inlet over the last several months, and as you will see, we have some areas of concern. The Army Corps has been made aware of it, but basically, if you look at the items B2 through B4, those particular spots are beginning to shoal in, and that's basically by that north jetty, as you see it on the eastern portion of the inlet right there. The Army Corps is aware of it. In fact, I was in touch with them today, and I know that there is the possibility of another maintenance dredge this fall. We will continue to monitor it through the summer and see what the condition is and make a decision, I would believe, before August. So we will be able to update you at that time. All I do is ask you to please be cautious and let others know basically what is happening there. I'd like to go over some of the capital improvements, major ones that we have currently right now in our budget. JDOC replacement, we still have a permit pending. Nothing has changed in terms of the current timeline. It is possible that it will be completed this fall and winter, and it is possible it may not be completed. We still have to get through the Coastal Commission permitting process, and we just don't know. We will have a drop dead date probably sometime in September, October, where we will have to make a decision as to whether we move forward or whether we need to delay it. You can see the current actual up there. That generally has to do with some of the permit fees that we've been paying and engineering fees. I also have on this capital improvement projects, Lot 1 tunnel ADA improvements, and if you've been through the harbor, you see some of the improvements that are going on in that area right now. Currently, we have a budget of $200,000. We've spent very little of that, but that is moving along pretty swiftly now and should be completed by July 2020. I would like to point out, I know so often we talk about capital improvements and how they relate to the slip renters because, I mean, that's what we are as a harbor, but I'm just making the point that a lot of what the harbor has to do has nothing to do with the slips, and there's many areas in the harbor that we are required to maintain, as well as making improvements on, such as all of the ADA improvements that have been analyzed and are on our list to get to eventually. I'll show you some pictures. This was last week. They've made some progress since then, but you basically see one of the crosswalks that's being improved near the Y intersection on the north side of the harbor. And then you see the one by the tunnel. Both of those are going to have lighted pedestrian pathways, so those will be a lot safer. From the maintenance standpoint, I know my numbers don't seem to correspond directly with the finance numbers you just saw, and there's a reason for that. Some of it has to do with how they account for it and how we account for it. As an example, SB 8, they show with a much higher budgeted number and a much higher cost at this point. And the reason for that is SB 8 was budgeted a prior year. When we recognized we were going to be able to save some money, we began budgeting for SB 5, which is the yacht club restroom. So you're going to see some discrepancies, like I said, in the numbers that she provided as well as the numbers that I'm provided. But our numbers are accurate in terms of where the harbor is on these particular areas. In addition, we are spending some money on the storage floats. I'll go over that as I have some pictures. You've seen the harbor maintenance building, roofs under some repair, and you've seen the beach restroom roofs under repair. That's what you're seeing in those areas there. And then another area is the beach playground. Our staff has been working hard to not just make improvements, but replace many of the items that have rusted out on the beach playground. We're also responsible to see that that is safe and open. So SB 8 is complete. If you've driven by, you'll notice it's a little bit more modern in its design, but the entire restrooms have been completed and are open. There was a significant amount of corrosion in the pipes that run underneath the building, and quite a bit of expense that the harbor spent, making those corrections so that that could last another 15 or 20 years. The Yacht Club restrooms, this was taken last week. We are a lot further along. The floors are completed, and most of the plumbing fixtures are being installed as we speak. So we still have a lot of work to complete there. The plumbing is still going to take another week to 10 days. Partitions need to go in, and additional painting, as well as some of the ADA fixtures need to be attached. Storage floats, if you've seen them around the harbor, you see them looking like this. I guess that's the scenario. If you build it, they will come. Well, if you put a larger storage box on a dock, they will fill it. And we've now recognized we need to, and we have ordered floats that are supposed to arrive this week, if not next week. And within a week, I would say, we'll have additional floats under those docks. The beach maintenance building roofs, as well as the restroom roofs, have been completed as we speak. They are finished. Galvanized aluminum or galvanized steel was used as the roof structures, and of course the salt and corrosion took a toll on these structures. They are now coated with a product that is actually being used in Petco Stadium down in San Diego, expected to last a good 15 or 20 years in our environment. And the beach playground, just to show you, currently now that is partitioned off, and we are in the process of making those repairs. And I will point out again, we have such talented staff, and they're always looking for ways to save you money, where many times we have to take a corroded piece of playground equipment and simply order it from the manufacturer and have it installed. Our staff has found ways to bring it to local contractors who are able to sandblast it down to a new finish and re-coat it and reuse some of that. So in a lot of ways, we're able to save you money. I want to make you aware that soon we will be doing this, I call it an operation. Right now, there are a number of dinghies, kayaks, sabots, paddle boards, jet skis, powerboats, you name it, attached to many of the single-sided docks. Those docks include T, Y, Z, A, E, F, and J dock, and many of them are not permitted. We have a few permitted spaces on those docks, but we need to know as a harbor who owns those vessels. We need to know what permit they're attached to. We need to know that it's also attached to your insurance policy on your permit. There are a number of ways that dinghies, kayaks, paddleboards can be stored in the harbor. They can be within your slip. They can be on your vessel. They can be in a storage rack if it's available and if it fits, or in a marked side tie with a permit. So we're going to be going through the harbor and marking out on those docks permitted areas, trying to contact those particular owners of those dinghies, because at this point, we don't even know who they belong to, but from a safety standpoint, we need to know who it belongs to and what slip it belongs to. So we'll be doing that over the next several months once we get caught up with some of our other maintenance items. Just an example of a dock, you see a number of dinghies that are tied along the side tie there, which is not a problem. It's just we need to know who they belong to. Little update on our grants. The Jolly Roger transient dock was submitted well over a year ago. Boating and Waterways is well behind on their grant reviews. I can't really tell you when we're going to hear from that. I don't know if Jennifer has heard anything, but they're trying to catch up on a lot. And now with COVID, They've not been in their offices, so we really can't even get an estimate. But we are very hopeful that that grant would be approved. The vessel pump out equipment replacement grant was approved. That's good news. We heard about that just recently. That's a 75% grant. We have one of our pump outs on our transient dock that is in need of repair and replacement, so we'll be doing that soon. And as I mentioned previously, the SAVE grant, which is used for abandoned vessels in the harbor, has been approved, and that money is available for us. Earlier, there was discussion regarding the harbor and its future, and part of that is really something that we need to do right here. We've started with an RFQ to where we could identify the best firms in the area, in the country, that are capable of doing this major study for the harbor. This is a much more complete study than has been done in the past, and I hate to again, spend a lot of money on consultants, but it's absolutely necessary that we get through this study because it includes more of what we need. It will include a harbor facility condition survey, and in addition to that, it will include a long-term maintenance action plan, which is basically a calendar of events, when and where we need to do this maintenance, including the costs of that specific maintenance out into the future as we are looking 10 to 15 years. And then a financial needs assessment, a year-by-year assessment based on current finances as well as future finances and everything that we need to do in between to figure out how to make that work. Is it going to be price increases? Is it going to be cost savings? The harbor is open to all areas here. There is nothing that's off the table as far as I'm concerned. We need to look at every possible opportunity to see that our numbers are able to meet the future demands of this maintenance plan. 3 companies have been qualified through the RFQ process: Richard Brady and Associates, which is a San Diego company, Moffitt Nickel, and Trans Systems. They are all well qualified to do this, so we're thankful we've got these great firms. Now it's a matter of picking the right one based on this RFP and the cost. As I mentioned earlier, we hope to get through this and be able to pick a consultant by early fall and be operating with this by end of year or early next year. And then finally, we've all been going through COVID-19. I just want to point out some of the impacts to the harbor. On the financial side, I mean, we know that there's a certain number of customers of ours that are unemployed. We have, at this point, approximately 45 requests for rent deferrals, and all that does is defer the rent for a few months, which needs to be caught up at a later time. Plus, the harbor has had additional expenses. We've had staff expenses, we've had costs of renting electronic signs, we've had signs to put up. There's been a lot that we've had to do to be safe and keep the harbor safe. So those are all areas that are going to affect our financials. We don't know exactly at this point what the impact is going to be. On the operational side, vessel inspections have been put on hold for over 90 days at this point. So we have a backlog of, I don't know, 100, at least 100 inspections that we haven't been able to get to. And part of that is because we don't have a volunteer force currently in place to do inspections. And that is still up in the air as to when the volunteer force is going to be back in place. So we are currently discussing our options with that. And we're going to need to look at ways of deferring that or handling it. But one way or another, we have a plan that we'll begin to put together on that. Also, general maintenance, because our staff has been, in some cases, 100% dedicated to issues involving COVID-19. General maintenance has been deferred in many cases. So we are desperately wanting to get back to that and get back on top of those maintenance issues. And the future maintenance too. I mean, everything that we do at this point is going to be trying to catch up but we still have future maintenance that we have to get to. And from an appearance standpoint, it's another important area of the harbor that I'm very focused on. Our harbor volunteers play a very big role in that. They're able to walk the docks. They're able to identify blighted vessels or vessels that are potentially unseaworthy. And again, we have no one to do that at this point. So I know that I've seen some issues. You probably have seen some also. But again, nothing we can do at this point until we can get back to staff and getting on those areas. Vessel inspections, and what I'm referring to here again has to do with some of the blighted or unseaworthy vessels. They're my first eyes when it comes to identifying a vessel that maybe is listing. Maybe there's issues that look like the motors have been pulled out, who knows, but they're my first line of defense in identifying a vessel in the harbor that may not be seaworthy. So that's very important from a safety issue. So we're dealing with all of this. Hopefully, as we've seen at least this past week, we're getting back to some normalcy. Now if I just had staff, I'll let you know that we're down about 3.5 staff positions at this point. So we're actively looking to replace and get back on top of all of this. So that is my presentation. I will answer any questions that you might have.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chiffone. You know, I'm really happy to see you monitoring the entrance because that's going to save lives. How many, we don't know, but I got to tell you, you know, some days it's impossible. Other days it's iffy, especially when turning. You know, you actually lose helm when your stern gets lifted up. The rudder's almost out of water. And we had a rollover last year because of that, but nobody died. So thank you. And on these side ties, you know, for years people have been complaining about there's not much small craft slippage in our marina. I'm sure you're aware of that because you've been trying real hard to find more. But couldn't these be relabeled and remarked and rented out and perhaps avoid a slip fee increase to the general population? Because I see a lot of people doing this in Dana Point, especially for jet skis and sabbats.
Right. Well, our plan is to basically partition off each section of those side ties so that that is a rentable space. Currently, the only fee we have is the rack fee right now. So we're not looking at a lot of revenue at this point for that, but it is something that certainly needs to be looked at. Again, everybody can keep a dinghy on their boat for free. They can keep it in their slip for free. But those areas, and I agree with you, you know, need to be permitted out.
Yeah, I do see a lot of dinghies on decks and in the water, but every dinghy I've owned, I couldn't keep on the boat. It was too big. I couldn't put it in the dinghy rack. It's too big. And last time I had it in the water in front of my boat, I was asked to remove it with the threat of being impounded and fined. So I really wish you could create a revenue source by renting out those side ties. Otherwise, you think it's going to be able to enforce them to be vacant? I mean, people are people, and they're going to dock their boats there. Well, and it's going to cause a lot of paperwork and
committee member for
stress.
That's what we're doing. We're going to be sectioning off those areas and renting those spaces out.
Oh, good. I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Great. Thanks.
Yes.
Mike?
Yes, a couple things. First, Ted, can you go back to that side tie photo? Sure. Just to further the conversation that Mr. Ford was bringing up. And that photo?
And the photo?
Yes,
sure.
Please. So what I'm hearing from you is that the harbor is going to go in there and tape it out, basically, and designate spots, correct? Is that what I'm hearing from you? And those folks who have existing vessels there, it's going to be a first come, first serve, or is there going to be how are we going to create an opportunity for everyone to get one of those slots? Or is it just because your boat's there, we're going to mark it on? If you're there, then turn in your permit and it'll cost you an extra $5 like a dinghy rack? Or is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. You're correct on all areas. We're going to need to identify first who they belong to, number one. So that'll be the first order we go through, will be to tag them, get them to call us, find out who it belongs to. Each of these docks is going to take some, let's call it analysis in terms of spacing it out.
Correct.
Because you have different particular items, such as the hose for the fire line in its way. You have other pilings in its way. So there's a lot of work that this is going to take. It's something we'll schematically draw out. Right now, we have enough space for everybody that's currently there. Now, not everybody that's currently there may even still be in the harbor. Some of this stuff is so old, dilapidated, it may be previous people.
I'm well aware of that.
And that'll
I'm well
go
aware
away.
of that. Yeah.
But I don't anticipate not being able to meet the needs of everybody that's currently in its space once we identify who it belongs to. So I'm not sure if your concern is not having enough space, or if your concern is...
So here's my concern, is that you're going to allow some folks, as you tape it out and designate which spaces are available, and there's going to be somewhere down in one of the slips, it's going to say, hey, time out here. You know, I've been here longer than that guy, and he's got his boat there, and what up? I didn't even get the opportunity to get my name on a list. Right. So I'm just...
So we haven't developed the process to do that.
Get it.
And I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fully understand all the issues that are going to come of this.
Right.
One thing I've always said, you know, we're not going to have everything for everybody. We're going to have a general plan that's going to work for the majority, and there's always going to be some exceptions we're going to have to deal with. But you're absolutely right. There will be a very systematic plan as to who goes where and how they get there.
Okay. Can you toggle back to the floats?
Let's see.
Oh,
that
yeah.
is at HDOC, I believe, and what you suggested, that they're just going to get some floats underneath to remedy that, because what I saw didn't appear as though floats were going to be the solution. Were they?
Correct.
Can you give me a better description of?
Vice Chair Kobus, what you saw was the incorrect floats that Bellingham brought down, not understanding what we had ordered. So the correct floats are coming. It's a Bellingham product. It's designed specifically for going under the dock and then being filled with air to level the dock. So they'll be doing it themselves. We're not even going to attempt to do it because, again, of the expertise required to do that. So the product that's going underneath there is designed specifically for that, and it's being done by the manufacturer who actually built our docks. Okay.
This is, I'm hoping, the worst case scenario. Are there other areas that appear this way as well, or?
There's others that are close to that, but this is probably the worst.
Okay, so this is give me a number, ballpark. How many docks are looking like this that are going to be refurbished and made right, approximately?
Richard's not here. I'm going to say 4 or 5, or maybe 6 at the most.
I think
Jennifer, do you know?
5.
Yeah, it's not all of them. I'm going to say maybe 5.
Okay, because like I said, I walked on this thing just last Thursday, and it's quite frankly, it's scary. So I'm glad to hear that it's coming in within the next 7 days or 5 days, or
we expect it to
tomorrow. Yes. That would be nice, because it's.
I'd like to piggyback a question on that. When Bellingham puts the floats under these particular docks, are they going to inspect the current fingers or the current docks for damage that may have been caused by these?
So they actually dive to do that, so they will be underneath and looking at everything underneath, correct.
And they will give you a written report, I hope?
I don't know if it'll be a written report, but we'll be there to know what's going on.
Any other questions?
Yes, in terms of the consultants that you have, when are you going to make that decision, and what body is going to be making that decision? Is that going to be yourself, Kyle, or who else is?
So what we typically do with an RFP is we will submit the RFP. We have a certain score sheet that goes along with it, telling them exactly how this is going to be scored. We'll have anywhere from 5 to 7 individuals from the city and outside the city review those proposals, score them separately. That'll then rank them, and then we bring them in again with, individuals from the city as well as outside the city who will then interview them and determine, once all of that is put together, who the best candidate is for that.
And as I asked before, is this body going to be involved in that process?
Certainly, we can certainly make, if you would like to name someone for that, we can certainly have someone available.
I would like to have someone on this body be involved. And would like to have this, I don't know what your timeline is, or when are you thinking? I know you've got 3, okay, and I get that there are certain I's and T's that need to be dotted and crossed, but what are we talking about here? This is June?
If it does, and I'm still waiting for some comments from Kyle and Jonathan and others in the city in terms of reviewing the RFP that I've created. If it goes as planned, we would very likely in September be beginning that review process, so that would be approximately the time frame.
When you say beginning the review process,
in other words, once they've submitted them to us, once they've completed them, we would submit the RFP open to these 3 firms.
Okay.
They're then going to spend a month and a half preparing it, let's say. They're going to submit it to us, and then sometime after they've submitted it to us, we would put together our group to begin reviewing those. And I'm just estimating that could be sometime in September.
What's your best guesstimate in terms of when they're going to be actually having divers in the water and having a look-see?
Oh, you mean in terms of the consulting? I would say later this year, if not January. There's going to, once we identify a firm, there'll be a contract.
So this is June, and we're not going to have anybody looking at our harbor until January?
It takes that time. By the time we get through the RFP process, a contract is put in place. It's going to come back before the HBAC committee, and it's going to come back before council and be approved before we can move forward with it. And that's always.
And that's going to be right about the same time that Bellingham is hopefully starting to do some work on JDOC?
It could be, but that doesn't interfere with the process.
How could it not?
Well, JDOC's going to be replaced at that point in time. We're not even certain JDOC needs to be evaluated at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions? Thank you, Ted. Next up is the fish market. James requests that this be put on.
Evening, Chair Ray and committee members. I'm here representing a group of commercial fishermen that tie up in the harbor here, and they have expressed their desire to have a fresh fish market where they can deal directly with the public. During the COVID disaster, a lot of them lost their markets, and with the restaurants being closed and whatnot, so they had to find alternative markets, and so they started selling to the public, and the harbor was gracious enough to allow them to do it during the COVID, and they were using an area over by the Helgren's kiosk to sell their products on the street there, and it worked out pretty well. There was a little confusion. It was kind of a test run, if you will, and they they worked out some issues, and I think there's still some more issues to work out there. Obviously, Helgren's is back in business now. They're allowing the sport boats to go out, and so they won't be able to use that area. And so I think there's some logistics to work out here with placement. I think maybe the same general area, maybe in to the west of Helgren's kiosk, in the loading zone area. I don't know, all this could be tweaked a little bit. I think maybe that's probably what this is all about, is just information to you guys to get some ideas on how to refine this. Some other harbors, San Diego, Santa Barbara, they've been doing these for quite some time, and they're very successful. I think they've been doing it in San Diego now for about 7 years, and it's a tremendous success down there. And I think it would be good for the harbor. I think it would be a draw, but also I think it needs to be done at a time that it wouldn't interfere with other businesses in the harbor. So that meaning maybe early in the morning, maybe 6 to 10 in the morning, something like that. Something where they could conduct their business and then be out of there, so it wouldn't bother anybody with parking or anything like that, or any of the restaurants or any of that. The whole idea of this is to be neat, clean, efficient, and for them to sell some fresh product. They can actually cut out the middleman, make a few more bucks, but they have to donate their time as well. And it's kind of a bridge between the public to where you could kind of educate the public on a more sustainable fishing practices and sell your live local product. So I'm not sure if on the back of this, of the last page of this, there's a diagram, and it shows that area that I'm talking about. And I don't know if that'll be the best spot or not. Maybe across the way, you might have to open up a few slips for that, or a few parking spots for that period of time in the morning or something like that. I'm not sure. Those are some of the logistics that need to be worked out. There'd be some other issues like maybe there would be a board of directors voted in by the fishermen to kind of oversee the whole operation and what's allowed and what's not allowed. There's some basic guidelines in this pamphlet right here that other harbors are using, and so there's some from different places, and they're kind of combined in this. And so I think if it started out small with some good control, then it would be a benefit to the harbor. So I didn't make this pamphlet up. I'm kind of winging it, so you have to put up with me on that. But I will try to answer any questions that you guys have.
Do we have any questions? I do. Mike?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up. I think this is a great idea. And the work obviously will be coming in the execution of it, crossing T's and dotting I's. I look at the last couple of pages here, and it's stating on one page, there's a North County Saturday Fisherman's Market member application. Are we thinking this as being picking one day to do this, and so it can be properly advertised and promoted? Is
correct?
That, okay.
The other harbors that have done it have pretty much proven that Saturday's your busy day, and you want to take advantage of it. You don't want to saturate it. You don't want to do it multiple days, because then you just spread it all out, and you do the same amount of business, but it's spread out and there's too much confusion. So it's better to do it on a one day, the busiest day, and then it would be all local fishermen. There wouldn't be anybody coming in from any place else to sell fish here. It would be local oceanside fishermen. And it would either be the fishermen themselves selling the product or their representative. But as you can read in there, that there has to be a period of time where the fisherman actually has to be here. That's the whole idea, is educating the public on the local fishing and the local supply. And so they want the participation of the fishermen selling the product.
And at this time, you have that commitment from those gentlemen that they're willing to?
There's about 5 different individuals right now that are interested. Maybe 6, and they want to provide, whether it's spot prawns, crab, fish, lobster, you know, try to get an assortment of different fish on a consistent basis. So most of that can be accomplished with the fishermen that are in the harbor. Now, there could be a time where they may have to bring in fish from maybe another fisherman. But the whole idea isn't to go to the fish market, buy fish, and bring it in here to sell it. That's not the whole deal.
Right.
You know, it's supposed to be getting a relationship with the public, selling a local product.
Local.
Correct.
And you're thinking that we can get a commitment for at least minimum 3, maybe maximum 6, or what?
I would say.
What are you
I would
thinking?
I would say that there's. I would say 4 to 5 that are seriously committed.
Okay.
And at this point, I don't think that you want to have conflicting sellers. I think you want to have one guy have one thing, one guy have another thing, one guy have another thing. So there isn't a competition. There should be some set pricing so that if there is a time when there's 2 different sellers, then one's not selling cheaper than the other to make a competition thing. That's the biggest problem, is the getting everyone to work together. From what my understanding, I've had communication with some of the people that do it in other harbors, and that's the biggest issue, is everybody working together. That's why I think you need a board of directors that's voted in by the fishermen, and then they need to go along with whatever the board of directors recommends.
Well, I, for one, am pretty pleased with this and would really like to see this move forward. I'm not sure how we could help or what.
Well, I think the next step probably is to work out some logistics, maybe with Ted, as far as location, and maybe getting more of a concrete commitment from the sellers, and just working out some of the other logistics. So it's going to take a little time to set it up. Some of the people that are here that want to do this are participating in other harbors right now. So they have a good idea how it functions and what it takes to make it function. So that would be helpful. You know, right now, they're, like I said, they're taking information from different harbors and combining it and trying to streamline it for this harbor. So.
Good. Any other questions? Carolyn?
Jim, clarify, so this isn't just oceanside fishermen from our harbor?
Yes, it is.
It is.
It is?
Yes, it'll be just, I mean, there may be a time where if somebody doesn't have product, they might have to get product from another fisherman locally, whether it's San Diego or Dana Point, something like that. But the whole idea is to use all local fishermen. Our fishermen will be selling the product.
Okay. And then has this been circulated around the harbor? So is there any opposition from any of the other businesses or boats or anything?
Honestly, you know, like I said, it was tried during the COVID here, right. And it had pretty good success. And I didn't hear anything negative other than just some logistics setup more than anything, you know. And I think that could all be worked out, you know.
Yeah, I heard through the Facebook page, and everything was very positive. So,
like I said, I haven't heard anything negative about it, you know, but the key to this whole thing, like I said before, is it has to be neat, clean, and organized. And you need to get people in and out, and it's not a gathering, it's a
business.
The market. And the key to this whole thing would be for each fisherman to not to have 5 or 6 guys there selling their product. One guy selling his product, another guy selling his product, and simplify it, because you're going to have people coming in and parking and tying up the area, and so you need to get them in and out, and then you work until either the time limit is up or you sell out of your product. It's been going on. I mean, they've been doing it at the Dory Fleet up in Newport, at the Newport Pier since 1930 or 29 or something like that. It's not new. So.
Any other questions? Joe? Okay. About 3 or 4 years ago, we had a lady who used to sell during lobster time in that space closer to the top of the curve. Would that be an area that they could consider?
Possibly, possibly. It's just a matter of working out. That's what we've seen. It's kind of hard to tell right now, but the parking lots have just reopened. So when those parking lots were all closed, we had a lot of people parking on the streets and walking all the way around the harbor. So there was a tremendous amount of foot traffic there while these guys were selling their product, and it was pretty advantageous. But I think the key is traffic, jamming up the traffic going into Joe's Crab Shack parking, and then the lots for the slipper inners. You know, so it's going to have to be. So there's going to have to be some understanding there.
Right. Christine, her name was Christine, who sold the lobsters. She at one point even took registration time slot, so you could come and pick up your lobster at a certain time, and that seemed to help move this.
Well, see, that's another thing. You know, there's going to be times where people are going to go, "Oh, I'd like to buy this," and the guy might not have the product at that time, and so they'd arrange something with the person to come pick it up later or something like that. But that could be a quick exchange in the loading zone right there. You know, I don't think you have to tie up the whole parking lot for that. You know,
okay,
prearranged. You know.
Any other questions? Thank you, James. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. This is something that is going to make our... Oh, Steve, I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. I just had a quick comment. You know, fish markets have always been a great attraction, and I think that's going to increase foot traffic. Restaurants are going to enjoy that. I think it's a win-win deal. I just hope that aesthetically it's pleasing to the eye, because I wouldn't want to see blue tarps or tents or
no, that's the key.
Ice running down the sidewalk. But I'm sure you are going to address that
like
too.
I said, that they're doing this in other places right now, and so just kind of taking their lead, and that's the big part of it, is neat, clean, orderly. You know, because you have to keep, this is a fresh product. You have to keep it at a certain temperature. You have to, you know, you can't, it's got to be neat and clean.
Thanks.
Thank you, James, again. And would you please keep us posted?
Yes. We're just going to kind of slowly move forward and try to get it organized.
Thank you very much. That's great. Okay, next for discussion, and we're shortly running out of time. Let's see, Steve, you wanted to bring up a matter?
I'll be quick.
Okay.
Thanks, Ted.
Back on, off and on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm here to discuss the fallout from the amphibious training track on Camp Pendleton, and it's just located just north of the Oceanside Yacht Club, where I happen to slip my boat. Now, I think you all agree that Camp Pendleton has been a great neighbor for many, many years, and still is, but this problem has been happening more frequently. It affects the boats as well as the service providers that are varnishing and painting on docks A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, sometimes I, depending on the wind direction, and sometimes Y and Z. In addition to that, it's also become a health hazard. One of my dock mates had a coughing spasm and had to leave the area. I happened to notice during the lockdown, the pandemic, that my varnish job got ruined twice. Ruined by means that had some particulates in it, had to be resanded and revarnished. I didn't mind. I was out of work. I was on my boat in the marina enjoying the beautiful surrounding. But one particular time, the stains were so bad on my deck, I had to go to West Marine and buy some deck cleaner, which wasn't strong enough. I had to add about 20% bleach, which is not recommended since we're in a very eco-sensitive environment. But I've got some quick other pictures here. The dust isn't normal dust. It's almost black in nature. And when you have to rinse off your boat to use it, you got to get there early in the morning. Some people show up at noon to use their boat, and they go, oh my gosh, what happened? They've got to hose it off, and it's wet. In addition to that, every time you wash off your boat, you worry about your deck plates for fuel and potable water being leaking. So it's a real pain, you know. I've had to wash my boat off really early in the morning and actually dry it off to use it. In addition to that, interior of the boats, believe it or not, my screen windows resulted in this. I've got two small screen windows, and I don't normally leave them open, but I did because I was doing some varnishing and had a lot of work on. Now that's just one wipe with a napkin. And no kidding, that's just one area, not adjacent to the screen window. So you can imagine my wife seeing that. Boy, she wanted to clean everything, and I couldn't stop her. I said, honey, you're working too hard. But she wanted to. So, in closing, I'd just like to say, it's not easy washing a boat down. You can see sometimes they have two levels, a fly bridge, large deck, plenty of windows, and then throw in the interior cleaning. It's really become a major problem. Now, I've made calls over there. I spoke to many different people. They all say that we're going to use the water to cool the dust on the track, but invariably it doesn't happen. So I'm hoping that we can make a recommendation to our city manager or whoever Mr. Schiaffone prefers, and we can send a letter asking them to cease and desist or water the track. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. It's caused from training right on the other side of the fence over by the yacht club. They do a lot of amphibious training and tank training. And when they run around like that, yeah, it's from the equipment. Do you have anything? Ted, this is an ongoing project that we've had with Camp Pendleton, and it's to my understanding that once perhaps the Harbor District or the city itself gives another request that they do it, it kind of slows them down, and they do put a lot of water out. Is this something that perhaps you could talk to them about, or have somebody, or have Mo talk to them about it, or?
Chair Ray, absolutely. We've had very limited success in having them comply. Mo is our contact person for this, and we use him. Anytime you can get a picture or get a video of what's occurring at the moment with a time stamp on it would be helpful, because the federal government doesn't necessarily listen to a city.
It's true.
You know, but we have also had some success for very short periods of time, and then as soon as there's a change in command, it's like it never happened
And
before,
there's going to be a change in command in the next 3 months, so.
But
just to give you a
I will
heads up.
ask Mo again to please stay on this and do whatever he needs to do.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, like Steve, I deal with this on a daily basis. I have 3 phone numbers I call over there. They have started the water truck again. It runs at 6 in the morning, and the amphibious vehicles start running around from 10 to 2. So their water truck really does nothing. They make the effort. They need to do better timing, maybe run the water truck when they're running.
Better scheduling.
They have cut a little bit of the course off. They run right down the fence now, and that is sending more dust towards A, B, C, D, and E, and F jock than it used to. If you wave at them, they'll adjust their course a little more. What I've heard is you can't sue the federal government, but this is not, used to be the yacht-yas, which was the, if you ain't tracked, you ain't whatever. It's now a corporation running it, and they could be liable for the dirt. It's the Advanced Amphibious Assault Testing, and I have their number. I'll give it to you, Ted. And when you get in touch with them, they do act, and sometimes it's just one guy going out there and running around for 15 minutes not realizing how much dirt he makes, and obviously it's on wind direction. So I think if we made a motion, or the city, the more attention we bring up, the better they'll do.
Okay. Any other comments? Mike?
Well, as a former Marine who once trained in that actual area, driving those assault vehicles, I do have some concerns about this, that this is the Marine Corps, and that's what they've been doing for a very, very long time. And us having to rinse our boats a little bit more is well worth the training that's been going on there for well over 60 years for the men who served our country, myself included. I think it's vitally important, and I would not support any motion to contact them and ask them to cease and desist what they're doing, because we never know when we're going to need those individuals, those young men, to go do what they are trained to do.
I don't think a motion is needed at this time, but if you gentlemen who have your boats down there, or any of the other boat slip renters down there, if you could, like Ted has suggested, timestamp pictures, videos, and then relay them to him. He can then go through the city, through Mo, and get them aware that they may not know that they're making this kind of a mess. As long as they are made adjustments and water it down at the right time. If you're going to start training at 2, water it down at 1.
Yeah.
You know, it just could be a scheduling time. But if they don't know that they're doing something wrong, and if we don't relay this to them, then, you know, we're just barking up a dead tree.
The reason the dirt is black is the exhaust from the vehicles, which is a cancer hazard. So at some point, out of 256,000 acres, they may need to move their training facility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a diesel engine with the dirt. That's where you get the black from.
It sticks together, and that's why it comes down on us.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other comments on this? Steve?
One last comment. It's not normal dust. Years and years of accumulation of diesel fuel, gas, hydraulic fluid, brake fluid, and all other kind of contaminants have been soaking into that ground for probably 30, 40 years. So it's more than a serious dust problem.
Okay. As long as we keep them aware of this and send pictures. Thank you, Steve, for bringing this to our attention. Next is an update on the ad hoc committee for the harbors and beaches. I can say right now we haven't met, and because of the COVID-19, but what I will be doing is, if you don't mind, I'll be sending out an announcement to have perhaps once things ease up again, we can start meeting again and get back on track with this. Committee member reports. Anybody have anything? Nope.
Just that the red kite cleared out.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was a mess. Mike, anything? Yes.
Well, as the Yacht Club representative, I'm glad that we have been able to open up, and we are keeping our social distancing, and have all of our policies and procedures are being taken place. And I want to take this time to thank not only yourself, Ted, but also your office and Lieutenant Sullivan back there, because this has been a really tough time to try to negotiate not only what the directions coming down from the state and then coming down through the county and then coming down through our own city and trying to make sense of them and apply to them. One good thing that's come out of this is that there's been a new Facebook page that's been developed. So we definitely have some new folks who are interested in what's going on in the harbor. They have voiced their concern, which is a good thing. And so we can hear what they want to have done, and they will not be silent. And hopefully in the months ahead, we'll have a little bit more participation in the House once we're free and clear, whenever that's going to be. But I just want to thank the Harbor Office and your personnel, Ted, and also all our officers back there. I think they've been doing a great job doing what they have to do during this time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Our liaison, Esther Sanchez, was here. She had to leave, unfortunately. So the next meeting will be in August. Do we have anything that anybody wants to voice about? If not, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting and reconvene in August? A motion? Okay. I guess we're all on. Okay, everybody vote?
I'll make a
Fine.
motion.
Okay, fine. See you in August. Thank you.
Okay.